Okay, we are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our very special live stream event on LinkedIn. My name is Matt Hubbard, and I will be your host. As a process improvement professional and lover of movies, I've got to say that the title of today's event certainly captures my attention. The title is The Ultimate Double Move: Achieving Process Excellence and Safely Operationalizing AI. It's a mouthful, I know, but when I hear it, I can't help but imagine James Bond as a speaker at an operational excellence conference for spy organizations seeking a competitive advantage. In his speech, James Bond recounts how, after numerous failed attempts, he finally pulled off the ultimate double move, and he reveals what made it possible. Yes, his unparalleled skill, wit, and charm played a role, but what ultimately took him to the next level was, you got it, assistance from technology. His gadgets developed by his organization's genius inventor, Q. And then, of course, James Bond concludes his speech by telling everyone where they can find his booth to learn more. Okay, though that vision may sound a little silly, I think there are parallels to what we're going to share today. For example, business leaders today invest heavily in technology, and we expect those investments to yield enterprise-sized returns. But often, only small and incremental efficiency gains are realized. So, what is holding us back from achieving more? How can we break through to the next level like James Bond? Our primary speaker today is Jesse Shiah, co-founder of AgilePoint. You can think of Jesse as our James Bond. Jesse is skillful, intelligent, and charming, but he also has access to some really well-designed technology, architected to pull off the double move and achieve not just incremental improvement, but enterprise-level ambitions. Okay, we've got a lot to cover today, so one last housekeeping slide for me, and then we'll get on with it. Please note, this event is being recorded. Audience microphones are not enabled, so if you have questions, please post them in the LinkedIn chat. And then, time permitting, your questions will be answered at the end of our session today. But if we don't get to your question, we will respond in a follow-up. Okay, without further ado, I will bring Jesse into our session and we will get started. Give me just one moment to make some screen changes. Okay, Jesse, all set. The stage is yours.
Thank you so much, Matt. So firstly, I want to welcome everyone. Thank you for taking the time to come to today's session. As Matt said, we have a lot to cover. And today, we're going to show you a lot of things we actually started building 20 years ago. And we think the market has finally caught up with all the innovations we have started out 20 years ago. So yes, we do have a lot to cover. And the innovation, right? Because how substantive they are, and is really what can enable us to really start changing the games. And the ultimate double move, what you see today, is just the first episode of this series. We're gonna come up with multiple different ways of how you can look at the same here. So today, let's get started with see how can we achieve process excellence and operationalize AI, and why is that? Let's go back to early 1990s. There were tons of efforts invested into re-engineering business processes. To be honest, right, a lot of visions, aspirations was already there. Just technology was not able to support that. And today, we are at the time of the friction point. This is becoming even more challenged now because we are in the growingly dynamic and connected world, right? And that means in a business development, customers, partners, the market, competitors, and all the new technologies are continuously evolving, right? A lot of organizations are really get lost now to see how am I be able to handle not just cope with, right? It's really to thrive in this complexity and chaos. And hopefully through today, we will be able to help you to see a new paradigm is possible, right, to deal with this. So firstly, this talk about a couple of very interesting paradox, right, and also the challenges. Matt had mentioned a few of them. I'm gonna borrow one slide from Gartner in the recent IT Symposium conference. Right, this slide here, this is more than 10,000 CIOs attended the conference, but Gartner shared this slide just to show every CIO what the CEOs are thinking. And it's, I think the most important thing one CIO to notice is that CEOs are placed efficiency and productivity in the last place. Well, we just talk about today's topic is process excellence, right? Process automation. Isn't everything about process automation is about efficiency and productivity? Why is that on the last place, right? Well, because what we're talking about, how fast this market is changing, and there's a pressing needs now to really deliver business innovations and outcomes instead of just deriving efficiency and productivity gain, especially if it's just at different silos and they are not related to each other collectively, right? So this is really where that, again, from the growth, from the technology. And the other thing to think about, why CEOs are so worried about technology, that should not be CEO's job, right? Because everybody knows this web of AI could make or break a business now, right? This web of AI is going to be here to stay. And of course, everybody facing, how am I going to get the talent? How am I going to upskill and reskill my workforce, right, to be able to handle this levels of dynamics and change? So in a way, right, so when we looked at that now, so it makes that every organization at the top, we always know there's a bottom line objectives, like cost savings, there's a top line, right? The executives are always thinking about how do I achieve the business goals, right? And there's a business outcome that to do with growth, competitiveness, right? Agility, resilience. But today we are really facing just very dynamic, right? The threats and opportunities coming at us, right? For example, even with AI right now, it could be a threat, could be an opportunity. Right. So at this level now, this requires a lot more faster pace of be able to respond to changes. And in the organization, process is really structural to be goal driven. It's very different from a lot of other operations, right? That more like infrastructure level. So the process level, right? There's a simple automation to do with tasks or workflows, but the closest to drive the business outcomes are the cross-functional, the end-to-end type of processes. And I know that many of you are probably already know, right? They are, if you go to the web, you just search cross-functional, you actually see more findings are talking about why cross-functional fail, why cross-functional doesn't work. But that is where the challenge is actual opportunity for us. And now today that become even more important now. So if we are going to align our cross-functional that very closely to business goals, and that is really being driven by all these dynamic threats and opportunities, it's better that we make business to be able to manage this part of operations, right? And of course, it's gonna need IT support because cross-functional is tend to be the most complex, but most dynamic. But we also learn now is the most business critical, right? And the other thing is, so all this cross-functional, if I can create them, but are they able to adapt, right? Respond to this, outside dynamics driving in, and and can that adaptations be automatic to a great extent, right? So this is really where that is kind of bring us to the process excellence now. It's not just about achieving, right? Uh, just create a lot of automation applications, right? It's really about now it's a very strategic vehicle, right, for us to be able to start operationalize AI. Because if I can do that, it will be the closest to help me to apply AI, not just apply AI to some of a lot of experiments, right? They are still, a lot of them are just driving, increasing the efficiency, productivity of different tasks or different activity, different silos, right? It gives us the game-changing AI opportunities. Right? Be able to really bring, especially when we be able to operationalize AI through our dynamic, adaptive, cross-functional. So now let's talk about why CEOs are now saying that don't give me more efficiency and productivity. Maybe the efficient productivity has to be a given. We shouldn't be spending so much effort just to get efficient and productivity at different silos. So maybe the next paradigm. It's possible that agility and productivity should be a given, because what I need to spend my time now is to be able to, how do I make them dynamic, right? So as a doesn't matter you are the tech leaders or business leaders, right? So really, I think everybody's familiar with drone shows, right? Imagine you are the conductor of all your applications, all of your automation applications, right? This is really, right, what your CEOs expect, right? All the applications we created, can they actually function, working collaboratively as a group, as a whole, right? To give us the levels of agility, right? So I'm gonna go, and this is actually the vision, right? We really want to set, right? Sorry, I'm gonna actually try to advance to the next slide. Looks like you will not let me finish. Let me finish that. Okay. So, but at the same time, so we know now cross-functional is the most difficult, most business critical. It is right next to drive the business goal, right next to what CEO can see the impact, right? But interestingly, we have talked to a lot of digital transformation leaders. Almost everybody tell us they are lacking cross-functional. Well, a lot of that is not just functional silos. It's actually the business system silos causing that, right? And many of them are still saying that the cross-functional really was supported by a lot of this ad hoc, right? The ad hoc emails, and this really, right, leading to the big data challenges. Why we have such a big, data science operations, and it's really because we do not have cross-functional. We cannot go into this in our next episode, right? And as a matter of fact, many of them actually look at this slide, say, that is us, right? And many of them been scratching their heads. They say, we were just so much technical debt, right? Everything is rigid, brittle, very brittle. It just breaks all the time. And the other thing is, they say, but we have every line of business platforms. They are all leaders according to the analyst reports, and we really have no idea why we got us into this picture. And not only this, right? This actually totally prevented an organization to be able to innovate fast and also apply AI, right? And some of them we have heard. Some of them are thinking about, oh, I go serverless, I go microservices. It's gonna reduce the technical debt. And many organizations don't know what to do, right? They just say, okay, every organization, every application I have generates technical debt. So if I reduce the number of vendors, then I can reduce the technical debt. Well, yes, but it's not solving the real problem. And some say, okay, I'm just gonna, I cannot solve that, but I'm just gonna delegate that, right? Offshoring that. Well, this is like what I always say. This is like you refinance your technical debt with a cheaper interest rate, but you are not solving the problems, right? So everybody knows. I think we have heard this from so many years, right? From all the analysts. But in this case here, this is actually coming from people doing the numbers, right? They're seeing so many companies, and yes, right, IT, right, because that is really driving us, right, to have to spend 80% on just maintaining the technical debt. And we do not have enough resource to go to innovations, right? And worse yet, right? According to the Gartner survey, 96% of the CIOs say they do not have AI-ready data, right? And I think all of this is really getting CEO, right, to worry, right? And now finally, today, we talk about process excellence, right? We cannot get away not talking about automation and hyper-automation. I know many of you may have heard of this term, right, from Gartner. It's talk about, is automation so important? We need to automate as much as possible, but there are so many different use cases, right? And a lot of this was saying that different use cases, you can use different automation technology to build them. But the question we ask is, okay, if I create a collection of automation applications, will it be AI ready? We're not talking about just one of them will be AI ready. I'm sure that every vendor will come to you, say, I got AI for you, I got AI for you, I got AI for you. But we are talking about, go back to that, the drone show we just looked at. Uh, all the automation applications created by different technologies, are they be able to be AI ready as a whole, that we are able to orchestrate them together, right? So that is really the question now we have to ask. Otherwise, we'll be continue to deliver siloed use case specific efficiencies, right? So this one here, just briefly, right? This is how we create application today. Either we go, with the professional development, right? Or even we use low code, no code. It really, it may give you a faster speed, as a perception, right? A false perception of I'm doing things faster, but it doesn't change the paradigm behind the scene, right? A lot of them is about code generations, right? So this is really what we're talking about. That is a new paradigm needed, right? We believe so. That's how we started out 20 years ago. And so first thing, right? We believe we must reduce the complexity, right? Because that is everything behind making things easier, faster, be able to manage at scale, be able to improve, be able to innovate at scale, right? So let's look at one example here. If we can reduce the complexity, what becomes possible? Right, this is actually one of our customers, a Fortune 100, and they have at that time, right, up to almost like 8,000 different legacy automation applications were built across multiple different platforms and different tools, but they built it throughout the 15 years. But when everybody look at the digital transformation, right, not only have to move to cloud, you have to try to make mobile, you have to try to make a lot of different things available now. They say, we got to rebuild all of them, but how? It took us 15 years. It was mostly built by IT at that time and maybe different service providers. They say, but we have to be very quickly do that, but how? Right? So in this case here, they actually created about 2,000 composable automation applications in about 2 years and replaced 8,000. But in this case here, they consolidated the technology footprint. Right? We talk about a lot of companies also started doing is consolidated vendors. But in this case here, not only because you not only consolidated vendors, but when you use the next paradigm technology, you also rationalize your application portfolio. Why? We reduce from 8,000 down to 2,000. Right? And they actually asked us a question. I remember this question very, very clearly. They say, hey, when we build this 2,000 right now, we will be bringing vendor A, vendor B. We're going to be using their platform very heavily. I don't want to name the vendors, right? And they say, but if I would decide to change from vendor A and B to vendor C and D, do I have to rebuild this 2,000 from scratch? We say, no. You go back in and reconfigure. Okay, because this is composable. And we're going to talk about how this is possible. And as a matter of fact, right, this 2,000 in 2 years so quickly produced was actually IT and business work together, IT support business, right? So here's Gary, who was a procurement expert at this company for more than 15 years. And he was responsible to create about 25 of the most complex procurement applications, right? So now, why with a new paradigm, we must get us out of this traditional mindset, right? And the first thing to do is stop comparing technology. To be honest, right, this what you see on this slide here is actually what I was told by one of the leading analysts when one of the conference, and I was introduced to a few new analysts, and they say, hey, by the way, this is a new analyst we just onboarded this year, and they are pivoting us back to focus on software engineering innovations instead of just comparing technology. What does that mean? If I say, oh, AgilePoint can create cross-functional, so right away you hear people say, well, oh, the other two or the other three vendors, they also say they can create cross-functional, right? But they are bigger companies. They are more well-known. Well, in a way, right? Now you have to really look at, it's not about just what can you do, it's how. And the how comes from here, right? And the how is really what could deliver that that innovative top line benefits, right? So here, but company got into this, even include the analysts, right? They say in the last 15 years they've been focusing on comparing this. One of the I attribute that to one of the key reasons was because 15 years ago we started moving to SaaS. A lot of vendors now no longer have to deliver software to customers' hands, right? So is behind the scene architecture's claim is totally excellence? Is that really important now? Yes or no, right? So, and that's really what we are talking about, because what give you, if you just focus on that, right? Say, oh, the other product can also do the same. Yes, they can deliver efficiency. Everybody can deliver that. But you know what? Now the innovative solutions, the next paradigm, right? Not only can deliver this, but it can also now can deliver this, because how? Right? So this is really what AgilePoint from day one is all about this, right? So firstly, let's take a look at what does that look like, right? If we're gonna have the new paradigm, so what are the things that we should look at? Firstly, we're gonna look at, like in an organization, right? We say you want to scale the organization, you got the separation of duties. Same thing, right? Here that we want to be able to create application. We want to the collective collection of all the applications can work together, can scale at that levels of agility. We need to look at, for example, the different speed of changes, right? And then see who can do that. And then so we are able to, all the actors can work together, right? So in this case, see, ideally, right, we're going to turn our underlying IT assets into a lot of composable components, right? That may require IT poor developers to do it using coding, but process abstraction, not pure coding only, right? When you get to the server now, the business logic more frequently change. It'll be better, as we say, it's a better candidates, right? This is a cross-functional processes. It's better candidates that it can be managed by business. But when they change that, they should not incur any coding changes. It's not like some kind of code get generated behind the scene quickly, right? Because we do not want that. So architecture will need to enable making changes without actual coding changes, right? So now let's now bring in this new opportunity and threat, right? AI. So AI now is gonna drive, right? It's gonna discover new things. It's gonna drive, but give us a lot of recommendations, right? How do we handle this levels of logic? And this is gonna be constant, because AI is not gonna stop, right? It's gonna work 24/7 for us. And so in this case here, we also like the closest to the business, right? The closest to how it's changing the business outcomes. Ideally, right? We want business to be able to do that, but cannot do that without IT support and governance, right? So this is more like our ideal, right, state. But let's take a look at how in reality today, right? What are the scenarios that we could do that, right? If we still have a very IT-centric development, right, then everything, all the requirements, here just the requirements created by business, now you get all implemented by IT, right? And in this case here, we all know what's going to happen, right? And not only that, business is not getting what business is looking for. IT is heavily being burdened, right? So now next, yes, now there's a lot of workflow, BPM, different local tools out there, right? Can now enable us to do drag and drop. Looks like this, drag and drop, building this. But the thing is, many of them behind the scenes, as we say, they use code generation, right? So in a way, yes, you're able to create something faster, but it's a very rigid structural automation, right? And again, go back to that drone show that we talk about, right? Are they able to collectively achieve that levels of agility as a whole? This is really where, right, why CEOs are getting so frustrated and saying that I don't want more of this kind of efficiency and productivities, right? So now, if we have AI coming into the picture in this type of scenarios, well, most of the time, most of the process solutions, right, workflow, BPM, and many other process solutions, well, most people can do is Now you start inserting AI into the process, right? So what do we call that? As a matter of fact, right, from spaghetti code to spaghetti model, right? If we do that, and what does that mean? Let's give another example. So here's an original process model, for example, and this is one that we'll be able to use, for example, what we're gonna emphasize today, right? From what AgilePoint architecture can enable. You can do that AI from outside. But if you cannot do that from outside, you have to do that from inside. You have to insert all the AI component into it. Now your business will get confused now because this why what are some of these components are doing, right? What are they for? And the other thing, right, when we can do it this way, as we say, right, business, we can empower business to master that. But when we do it this way, it's almost guaranteed, right? You cannot bring in developers. You cannot bring in maybe some of the data, right? And so from the business perspective, we talk about agility, resilience. Is like this is right away. Business can respond to threat opportunities. In this case here, you have to wait until the resource bandwidth available, right? So let's talk about look at the scenario that was AgilePoint here, right? So everything, the big difference is that, as we say, we 20 years ago started working on is about how do we bring have technology wrap around with abstractions. So first you're gonna see abstraction. Okay, so because of that, we are able to enable, right? In this case here, the business can actually change, compose, and change, and it does not incur code generation, does not incur, the code change, right? When it comes to AI, now I'm able to same thing. So not only be able to do that inside the process, can do that outside of the process. Why? This is actually specific to this, and this is actually achieving the true strategic ability, right? The business needs to be able to look not just one, but a collection of your processes. But you can also do that through the abstraction, right? With codeless composability. So let's talk about the next paradigm, right? So when we set out 20 years ago, and what we wanted to build, right? We said, how can we enable a platform to enable business to be able to innovate fast and have the future-proof agility and resilience? And we think it has to really bring abstraction in, right? It will be a codeless composable application because we want to empower the always ready for change business. So we started out, right? We said, okay, firstly, continuous improvement shouldn't be for process only. It should be for every applications. Applications is not about just change management. Everything has to be continuously improvable. But that improvement without including engineering cycles. And because architectural characteristics of this, some people look at AgilePoint and they say, oh, AgilePoint looks like a flexible BPM and workflow. And we say the architectural, we want business agility. It cannot be code generation enabled. It's not just basically accelerating the method, but doesn't change the paradigm, right? So it has to be reduce the complexity, eliminate taking that, no code generation. People look at that, they think of AgilePoint as a low-code solutions and for system development as well. But now this is actually what gets us really excited, right? Finally, right, we think the market had caught up with every part of the three pillars that we started out 20 years ago. Because at that time, we also say this architecture, if AI succeeds, AI needs a dynamic execution engine that you can, at runtime, you can adapt applications, but without including code change, right? So, and sometimes we're talking about, when we started at AgilePoint, we were thinking that we were told that every new software paradigm takes 15 to 20 years. And sometimes now we realize sometimes it's not how fast you can be ready, it's actually when the market will be ready, right? And so in a way, so this is probably one of the, probably the most technical slide in the presentation, but basically what we talk about is, hey, regardless you have all of the automation technologies, right? We talk about hyper automation, or you may have a lot of different other business systems. And instead of creating application in each one of them, and then ended up become technical debt in each one of them. Remember we're talking about that's what lead to a lot of organizations now thinking about consolidating vendors, because they say every single one creates technical debt for me. And now let me just reduce the number of applications, consolidating the vendors. But we take a very different approach with the paradigm shifting, right? So we say, okay, all these applications, they are all important, right? We are not rip and replace them. And you can, but the firstly is they all expose application level assets, right? Like APIs and services. They also have data related to them. Many of them are system of records, right? So they also provide API models, fabric, and meshes for that. But I also understand that some of you, because of data analytics, right, data operations, some of you have built something called common data store, like Microsoft Dataverse. Right? But a lot of this, right, are really at the infrastructure level. Right? We are talking about we want to connect this to the business goal. Remember what's in the middle process. Right? But AgilePoint's architecture takes all of this asset from all of these systems, right? Through this abstraction framework, and then we started creating this loose coupling. Right? Now we have the common application logic and common data model shared by whatever the systems exposed here. Right? If I have this collection of automation applications I now have a common metadata representation of the application logic for each one of them. In AgilePoint now, they are common now, right? The same to common data model. So this one here is different from this one, right? This is more like an infrastructure level data operations, but this one here is for process. Every process is goal driven. It's different. You have a different goals, right? So every part of this part of common application and common data model is enabled inherently by AgilePoint for each of your applications so that you can naturally generate AI-ready operational data. And collectively, all this asset now become a catalog of abstracted business activities, right? And from here, now you can start doing your composition. But you see, even this is one API, the API coming from one of the systems, and they get used in 3 different compositions. There's no replication of data or application. It's just a metadata reference, right? And this is really where that, this levels of abstraction, right, enable us, we mentioned about. Not only that I can actually, when I apply AI, not only I can also the rest of other process vendors, then most likely it's going to be insert AI into your process. AgilePoint's architecture enable that, another layers of abstraction that you are able to create external AI agents and bots that build with Agile AI extender, right? So in reality, we mentioned about that customer, right? They have composed 2,000 applications to replace the 8,000, and that 2,000 applications were composed by as we touch on, right? For example, that Gary, a procurement expert, it was actually all used out of a box from AgilePoint, because we already, throughout the last 17 years, 18 years, we already abstracted more than those assets from more than 100 most popular line of business systems and cloud platforms, right? Those are just a few of them. And so now they more than 1,000 available. And so this is really where that was human activities, right? System activities and different patterns and logics and everything, right? That's why you can start compose full stack application, UI, logic, and data. And whatever you compose now, as we say, everything, even I use some of this from the different systems, they are just metadata reference. And AgilePoint engine, without code generation, will execute dynamically. Okay, and this is really where that things getting, every application I build now is optimally hyper agile, right? Because my model never gets into code, and it's all metadata. So what that means is AI can touch on my metadata, right? When you change different metadata, this application will run differently. For example, for different customers, for different case, right? And this is what we really talk about, not just a data now, right? It's actually even the application logic is AI-ready metadata, right? So I can touch on those metadata, I change the behavior of my application. And now Not only we use that to be able to do that runtime, mass personalization, right? That's also being leveraged to assist with the governance. And now with a Gen AI perspective, there's already formed data in, entity, and very soon in this year, you're gonna see AgilePoint be able to start doing auto adapting and auto composing. Why? It's because we are operating at the metadata level, not at the code level directly, right? So when I talk about cross-functional, because we talk to so many digital transformation leaders when they say we lack cross-functional, and I cannot. And it was so interesting that almost 9 out of 10 they will add this sentence. They say, "Well, you know what? We tried to do that over the years, but we realized it's not about just technology. It's so difficult to bring people from different functional area to come to the table, right? And this is really where that this technology also enables." Right? Because we do not generate code, right? You got able to surface that from different line of business systems. And this is, and that really virtually, right? Without they have to leave their systems, but they're seeing different AgilePoint applications. They just need to do what they need to do, but they virtually actually collaborate cross-functionally, right? And this slide here is just that this platform is really built for both business and IT to accelerate innovation. IT is able to abstract more assets, its own custom assets, to the level that enable business, right, to be able to master, especially that process, especially that cross-functional level, right? And business can actually dynamically improve because there's no code generation. And as we talk about, right, this is where AI can come in. And we can talk about all this agility, all this dynamics without not touching on how you're gonna be able to govern and put a guardrail in place so they can be secure, right? This is also the 20 years innovation and been proven, right? Working with a large global enterprise since 2007, this layered adaptive governance framework. So you can, through this layer, right, you can support the permutations of the different levels of governance for different use cases. And now, quickly, right, let's take one use case here. Say it's a customer's onboarding, right? This is a cross-functional. It cut across multiple different systems and also human. So it means that it includes human to human, human to system, and system to system. So firstly, as we talked about, AgilePoint not only enable you to be able to apply, right? You can directly work inside process that everybody can do. So we are not going to go there. But we're going to talk about what this next paradigm will enable, right? It's enable you to create agile extenders, agile AI extenders like this sitting outside of the process that can be driven by your choice of AI models. But through layer, each one of them can, with the configuration menus, the business can actually configure to see how the AI will actually impact what they want interesting to to see or to manage. Okay, and this will be created by IT. And assuming now, right? So in this case here, right, we have created one. This is actually what CFO, right, from finance they care about, right? They want to mitigate the risk, right? If I'm gonna have to onboard a customer, and I want to make sure that this customer can pay us, right? So AI will dynamically find a lot of those information for us. But if for one of the customers onboarding, let's see, and then how's finance configured from here and saying that when certain threshold hit, well, then we need to add another dynamic, an additional review just to mitigate the risk. Okay, and this can be dynamically happened, right? Okay, maybe from the CIO perspective, say, hey, if a customer, right, I want this customer to go through this so that we can actually get to POs and everything. So in this case here, we go through this now, and there was a mistake happened here, but nobody knew. But we are already here now. But I don't want to finish this and then found out there was a mistake. But at this time now, AI is already detected there was a mistake. Now we can dynamically roll back and fix that. Instead of we finished now, we found out it's wrong, we have to start over again, right? So those are just few examples, right? All of this is because what we talk about, it's not just about data now. It's not about just AI-ready data. It's about this levels of abstraction enable us to have that AI ready metadata is about application logic. And this is key to enable us to get our vision, right? The collection, if I build a collection of this application, how they can function collectively, just like what we're seeing in the drawing show, okay? And then from there, because now I can create, process application now. Every process can the data now is not just data now. It has context about metadata, context metadata. If I get rejected 5 times, for example, that get captured. Without a process to capture that, those data context get lost. That's why we lead to the big data challenges, right? Everything coming out here because of that is ready for an analytic, ready to go into data warehouse, right? Also, if I do this kind of things more often, the data coming out of here can also be at the same time in parallel being prepared to be AI ready, to go back to the AI model to continue to the learning. And now from there, if this kind of things happen more frequently, now it can auto adapt to create, for example, from version 1 to version 2. Okay, so we are really talking about, right? This is really that collection of automations that we can create, but we want them to collectively function just like what we see. Each one of them, each one of the automation applications, like one of the drones, but collectively, I want them to be able to operate, right, as a whole. And in a way, how do we get there, right? We talk about that different additional the AI agent bots, right? You can create as an extender, and then each one of them could actually continuously improving a different part of your fabric. Okay, and this is always on now. This is always on now, right? And this is what we're really talking about. How this has been really tried and true, right, since 2007. And this is actually a Forrester report, talked to 4 of our customers as early as 2007. And this is the size of the company. As you can see, every one of them is a global enterprise, right? And in different industries. But what's more interesting, right? They actually break down the different benefit the customer get. But this one here is we have prepared our customer, right? Many of them, they have created a lot more benefits, right? The benefit derived, a lot more is coming from cross-functional processes. What does that mean? Many of these customers are already in good hands to be able to bridge them into this new paradigm, right? And this is another customer, and even at the levels of they have more than 50 global subsidiaries. Many times this is actually just leading to become a holding company with all these individual operations. But now in this case here, how can they digitally running as one, right? Not only each one of them can use AgilePoint, right, to create automation, gets that typical efficiency productivity gains, right? We say, but this is a given because in AgilePoint, you know how to create a model, you get this already, right? Really, right? What you want to spend time now on is like this. They say, okay, I got 50 subsidiaries, but how do I still have that collectively agility? Instead of letting each one of them create their own, say, customers onboarding, right? I can create one customer's onboarding, but that one customer's onboarding solutions can be mass individualizable, can be shared by each one of them, but each subsidiary, when it triggers that with different metadata, that customer's onboarding will function differently, right? So this collectively now, we are able to get to that level of agility, right? So back to what we see earlier, right? So AgilePoint plus AI is really your agile automation fabric. In a way, I like to think that's actually becoming your digital twins of your business operations, right? So with that, I know that many of you probably will come to our website, and I just want to, we haven't really replicated this, what you was hearing in this section so far on our website yet. Okay, but in less than a week, right, we're gonna, there will be a white paper, ebook like white paper will be available, right? It was created by Jim Siner. Jim Siner has been a Gartner analyst for many years. As a matter of fact, right, we actually started working with Jim now around 2007, first time, and this one will be available in less than a week. So every one of you will receive a copy. Okay, so With that, I'm going to turn this back to Matt. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jesse. Very nice job. Now, to bring to life some of what Jesse shared, our colleague Lucas Drage is going to give us a mini demo of 3 key concepts in action. First, Lucas will set the stage by showing a typical cross-functional workflow for managing customer orders. Second, Lucas will leverage an AI model to assess fraud risk and dynamically reroute the workflow. And last, Lucas will build from scratch a home inspection app using only generative AI. We're going to try to do this in about 10 to 11 minutes, so don't blink. Let me just bring Lucas front and center, and away we will go. Okay, all set. Over to you, Lucas.
Thank you, Matt, and thank you, Jesse. And hi, everyone. During this portion of the webinar, we're going to demo how AgilePoint supports the business-led creation of cross-functional automation at scale. We'll also touch on how AgilePoint's codeless architecture can enable you to easily operationalize your AI strategy throughout the entirety of the organization, and close things off with additional AI capabilities that we've layered throughout the platform to support immediate self-service and automate the entirety of the application creation process. Let's take a look. So first, let's take a look at a classic example of a cross-functional process. Here we have a customer order management scenario where the top row is all about collecting the new purchase and processing payment. As I scroll down towards the bottom of the model, you're going to see sub-processes to replenish depleted stock if necessary, initiate shipping, and collect feedback from the customer, so external participation. But many of these sub-processes are comprised of a number of steps in their own right, making for a complex and cross-functional application. Now, to give you a sense of how these are built, when I build an application in AgilePoint, I have more than 15 dynamic process patterns at my disposal, so I can easily implement any process requirement without requiring code. I also have pre-built abstracted capabilities for user participation, as well as integration with more than 110 of the most popular systems. So as I scroll through the list, you're going to see directory systems, relational databases, cloud content management, as well as leaders in ERP or CRM, like SAP and Salesforce as an example. You're seeing IoT and AI services, and just about everything from an office productivity perspective. So to show you how this integration works, let me bring up Salesforce here as an example. Now, I might not have specialist knowledge in Salesforce, but I can rest assured that within each integration, the integration goes extremely deep. 25 actions here within Salesforce alone. So if I want to create a record in Salesforce, all I have to do is select the appropriate action from my stencil, drag and drop it onto my canvas, and follow a simple wizard that's going to guide me towards my intended outcome. So when I select how I connect to Salesforce, that gives me a scope of objects that I can work with. So now all that's left is visually mapping fields. On the left-hand side, I have my AgilePoint data structure and a real-time exploration of the data structure in the external system on the right. So now all I have to do is find fields. Email will go to email, phone will go to phone, address to address, etc. So even without specialist knowledge, I can easily bring these integrations into my application. Now, we did promise you AI, and one of the key areas you'd heard Jesse talk about is that the AgilePoint platform is codeless. This means that not only are applications highly performant out of the box, but they can also be optimized by an algorithm at runtime. So for this, you're seeing I have an integration called machine learning, where I can expose models from leading providers and use that to optimize the workflow execution. Now, in this case, having an order management scenario, we have an AI model here that's going to check for credit card fraud. We're going to pass key demographic details about the cardholder to that model, and in return, receive a risk assessment. Now, if the model determines that there is a high potential for fraud, rather than go for straight-through processing, we're going to adapt the workflow execution. We're going to bring in a resolution step where a customer service rep is tasked with calling the customer to validate that they did in fact make the purchase. So let's give you a quick sense of how this is brought in. So when I select the model, we're going to see that we have it activate during the authorized payment step, and again, check for credit card fraud. As I mentioned, we're going to pass key demographic details about the cardholder over to the model, things like their location, age, etc. And in return, it's going to give us a risk assessment. Now, I've created a rule here where if there is high potential for fraud, we want to reroute the workflow to the resolution step. And as you can see here, I've set that rule where risk level equals high, skip over to the resolution step. So now that we understand how this works behind the scenes, let's quickly run the application. So to run the app, I have my custom landing page with menus, with reports, and different media down below. But I can go ahead and click the button to run a new instance of our application. Let's go ahead and bring up our customer. It has their age, location, prior order history. So now all that's left is to select the products and input the payment card details. Now, AgilePoint does have access to real-time inventory. So as an example, the entertainment center is out of stock, but we do have ample stock of chairs. Now, in most cases, we would tie into a product catalog for costing. But now let's just go ahead and input all of our card details. Now, as you're seeing, based on what I'm entering, the demographic details do not line up with the cardholder, so we should see that algorithm kick in and indicate there is high potential for fraud. Okay, so when I submit this, we can go back to our process tracker, and we should see an instance that's just kicked off. All right, so just bringing this up here with our visual audit tracker, we'll see that the workflow kicked off. We ran it through the authorization step, but the algorithm has rerouted the instance of this workflow down to resolution. So this is an indicator that this is a risky transaction. And in fact, when I open up the form for the customer service rep, we'll see that here front and center. There is high potential for fraud as a part of this transaction. So I'm taking an offline action to call the customer to validate that they have in fact placed this purchase. And I can give a screenshot of an email here as proof, for instance. But in clicking submit, the workflow will now continue through its course. All right, now to close this off here, I want to show you some of the newer AI capabilities that we've brought into the platform. Now, most of you are probably familiar with ChatGPT. AgilePoint has brought in its own GPT-4 model that is personalized and trained on the AgilePoint platform. And it's going to give us immediate answers to both product as well as coding questions. So for instance, if I want to learn how to connect to Salesforce, it will give me step-by-step instructions. And similarly, if I ask it a coding question, not only will it give me the instructions, it will also generate the coding snippet that I can bring into my form. Now, if that wasn't easy enough, we can also automate the entirety of the application creation process using generative AI. So as you can see here, I have a new button in my application designer. In subsequent webinars, I'll show you how we can upload an image or a PDF and have AgilePoint create an app for us. But for now, let's go ahead and let AI decide. I want to create an app to track home inspections, and AgilePoint's going to generate the data model as well as the entire application itself in a matter of moments. So the first step will be to create a data model. So as you can see here, it's suggested various columns for my table, And there are a couple of instances where we have a pick list. So I can use AI to generate standardized values for a drop-down list. So the first is going to be around the inspection type. And secondly, we're going to do inspection status. Okay, so it's generated our table for us. So now all we have to do is go through a few clicks and we'll have an entire application ready for use. Okay, so when we open up the designer, we're going to see a completed application. So from here, all that's left is to check it in, publish it, and our application is ready to go. So here's our app, all nicely laid out in a cohesive and coherent format. So let's check it in, click publish, and we're ready to go. Okay, so in just a few seconds, our application is fully complete and ready for use throughout the organization. Thank you so much, everyone. Matt, Jesse, back over to you.
Thank you, Lucas. Really nice job. I want to apologize to everybody. We are running just a little bit over, but I think I can wrap this up in 3 minutes. We are going to have to skip the Q&A session. Any questions that we got, we will do a follow-up, either a written communication, or we might even schedule a dedicated fireside chat. Okay. To wrap up, I'd like to share with you one of my all-time favorite quotes. It's from the founder of Honda, who said, "Action without philosophy is a lethal weapon. Philosophy without action is worthless." Now, Mr. Honda was kind of a feisty guy, and he certainly didn't mince his words. But for our purposes, I want to draw your attention to the second line of his quote. Philosophy without action is worthless. Let's think about that. If I learn something new, but I don't apply it in the real world, does it really have any value? If you think you learned something beneficial in today's session, I'd like to challenge you to capture its real world value by taking a step towards action. Maybe your action is to put our tech to the test and see for yourself. If that's your next step, you can scan this QR code and we will help get you started. Or maybe your action is to dig deeper and get some questions answered before you give it a try. If that's the case, here are some QR codes for you to contact any of the speakers through LinkedIn, and we will be happy to connect. Regardless of what your action step is, we'd love for you to continue to join us in these live stream sessions. Today, we shared some concepts and scratched the surface with what I would call a teaser demo. Our next session will be a more in-depth and specific demo of operationalizing AI through process. We hope to cover a specific use case for something like customer onboarding or order to cash, but more details will be shared soon. In the meantime, please mark your calendars. Okay, that brings us to our session close. If you didn't capture the QR codes fast enough or want to revisit parts of the session, don't worry, a recording will be made available through LinkedIn and the AgilePoint website. We are most grateful for your time and attention. Thank you to Jesse. Thank you, Lucas. And until next time, keep well.